So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. It's really exciting to have you here. Join us in this webinar on intergenerational volunteering. This webinar is part of our Volunteer Factor webinar series brought to you by BMS Canada. Also, I'd just like to wish any participants today who are here from Quebec a happy Intergenerational Week. Since 1987, Quebec has been celebrating initiatives that promote and exchanges between generations. And in May 2022, the National Assembly of Quebec officially recognized the third week of May as Quebec Intergenerational Week. It's an opportunity to pay tribute to the commitment of all the professionals and volunteers who work to bring generations together, and a unique way to highlight and promote local intergenerational initiatives. I'd just like to share that at Volunteer Canada, we recognize and acknowledge the Indigenous peoples as the original stewards of the lands on which we live, work, and volunteer. We humbly express our gratitude for their long-standing presence and enduring connections to this land. I'd also like to share today that personally, I am joining you today from the beautiful east coast of Canada, nestled on the Woolastock River, on the traditional unceded territory of the Loistoquik and Mi'kmaq. If you'd like to share today where you're joining us from, please put that in the chat. We'd love you to do that. At Volunteer Canada, our mission is to provide national leadership and expertise on volunteerism to increase participation, quality, and diversity of the volunteer experience. Since 1977, we convene, connect, and collaborate with all sectors to encourage and support volunteerism and meaningful community engagement. Our website, volunteer.ca, is an excellent hub of resources to strategize and strengthen volunteer involvement in your organizations. Some of you may know us and some of you may not. So please do share who we are with your peers and encourage them to visit our website. So I'd just like to introduce myself a little bit further. My name is Anita Newling. I'm a pediatric nurse, educator, and mental health advocate, and I joined the nonprofit sector in 2018. I've always gravitated towards intergenerational friendships. I was lucky enough to grow up in the theatre world, which is a naturally intergenerational activity. In my early 20s, my best friend was actually a gentleman in his late 70s. We spent a lot of time together, and I learned a lot from him. So in 2020, I was lucky enough to be able to move my career into intergenerational work. I was the project coordinator for an intergenerational housing project. And that was tough. It was pandemic times. As you imagine, it's challenging to start anything relational, let alone expecting people to live together. But this work piqued my interest in the field, and it led to me taking my intergenerational certification with Generations Working Together in Scotland. In 2021, I launched a program called Better Together, which is an intergenerational program for positive mental health. Engages youth and older adults in the community for shared learning and recreation. I joined Volunteer Canada a couple of months ago, so I'm relatively new here, and I'm their manager of intergenerational initiatives. And I'm really excited over the coming months to share our plans with you. I'm also joined today with my wonderful colleague, Emily, who's behind the scenes with all the tech stuff for us, who this couldn't happen today without her. I'd also like to thank Shaminda, who some of you may know, for putting this webinar series together and inviting me to moderate today. So our objectives today are to touch on the shifts in older adult and youth volunteerism, identify what to consider for a successful intergenerational program and how to sustain intergenerational engagement. Before I introduce the panelists, I'd just like to set the scene and share the focus for today's discussion. In the face of complex and overlapping issues at the moment, such as rising costs of living, a growing loneliness epidemic, and a rapidly aging population, and climate change, there is a great need to scale up collective responses to these crises. Volunteerism has historically offered a channel to get involved and scale collective action. It's known to forge stronger and more resilient communities and promote a sense of meaning and belonging. In a time of eroding social cohesion, volunteerism offers a hopeful path forward. With the data showing us that volunteer engagement of youth and older adults is still low post-pandemic, it's interesting and actually maybe necessary to think outside the box on ways that we can create pathways for these groups to re-engage in organizations and in community. Intergenerational programs have the potential to be the catalyst for increased volunteer engagement in your organization and in society, planting the seeds of the value of volunteerism for future generations. So today, we're going to chat with some wonderful intergenerational practitioners and researchers who'll be sharing their knowledge and inspiring us with their experiences and stories. There's lots of folks here today from across the country. You're all coming from different backgrounds. You're all going to have different interests in intergenerational work. But whether you're curious about starting an intergenerational volunteer initiative, or you like to create a program to bring young people and older adults together in your organization or in your community, what you learn today on the benefits and design of intergenerational programs will be of great value on this journey and help you to take an intergenerational lens to your work. I now have the great pleasure of introducing our panel for today. So Sharon McKenzie is an intergenerational consultant, writer and researcher, and executive director of I2I Intergenerational Society of Canada. Sharon, now a senior herself, has always looked to older adults for support and friendship. From 2000 to 2010, she initiated an intergenerational immersion research project in BC called the Meadows School Project. She moved an intermediate class into a makeshift classroom in a care facility for 2 months and continued those connections throughout the school year. Students and seniors shared in curriculum, visitation, and community projects. Garnering worldwide acclaim, the project was recognized by the World Health Organization at the International Federation on Aging Assembly in Turkey in 2012. Sharon presented to the Humour Parliamentary Committee panel on intergenerational volunteerism earlier this year, and she stated that engaging children and youth with seniors in intentional and respectful activities encourages volunteerism. Young people recall their positive experiences and seek to re-engage with the older adult community. Sharon provides workshops to a wide range of audiences, all curious about becoming involved in their own intergenerational projects. And more information about I2I can be found on the website link that will also pop in the chat for you. Our next panelist is Tracy Swim. Tracy coordinates family-friendly volunteer visits and award-winning intergenerational programming for Montreal West's United Church's Extra Miles Senior Visiting Program. Her focus is to reduce the isolation of older adults, increase their sense of connectedness to the community, and their sense of value and worthiness to build a stronger community. Together with Miranda Potts in 2017, she co-founded the Montreal-based WIN Intergenerational Network, formerly known as the West End Intergenerational Network. WIN brings together and works with over 40 community organizations, public institutions, and citizens to create innovative approaches to intergenerational programming to foster inclusion and belonging for older people, adults, and youth. Tracy has been working in partnership with Engage, Concordia's Centre for Research on Aging, and she serves on a number of advisory boards and has been a collaborator for many projects. She is a proud member of the Town of Montreal West's Age-Friendly Municipality Steering Committee and Montreal West's Seniors Advisory Committee, assisting in Montreal West's goal to be an age-friendly community. Prior to her work for Extra Miles, Tracy has 20 plus years of client service focused project management experience working with and for multiple levels of stakeholders in the private sector, consulting and planning. And for more information on the WIN network, that link will also be in the chat for you. Our third panelist, we're glad to welcome Leah McCarroll. Leah is a PhD candidate in public policy at Carleton University with a background in civil society research and evaluation, policy analysis, and knowledge mobilization. Drawing on over a decade of experience in the nonprofit sector, Leah channels her passion for research into supporting research and analysis on key policy trends impacting community-based organizations, volunteerism, and participation. She's particularly interested in research that prioritizes equity and justice, bridges theory and action for change, and builds the leadership and decision-making capacity of the sector. Leah has worked with Volunteer Canada for the past year, and she currently volunteers with the Stratford Affordable Housing Alliance, a community group working together for a sustainable, equitable, and resilient future. Welcome to you all. What a wonderful panel we have joining us today. We'll just jump right in and get the questions going. Our first question of the day is, what are the benefits of intergenerational programs for youth, older adults, and the community? And we'll start with Sharon. We know there are many benefits of intergenerational programs that has been proven through research, but could you share some of the benefits that you've seen through your work?
Yes, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for your interest in this topic. It's one that's near and dear to my heart. I think the best way I can describe the benefits is it improves health, and that's every kind of health, physical, mental, social, etc. And it is part and parcel of that. It's isolation and loneliness because it reaches out juniors to seniors and seniors to juniors. They make that connectivity is in the world of friendship and shared experiences. And so there are many, many benefits that just fold out of the experience. When I first took my students to the care facility, I had no expectation that it was going to be quite as amazing as it was. And it only took a matter of, oh golly, about a week and a half. And I'm just going, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. It was like opening up a jewelry box with all these beautiful jewels. I can explain some things through stories, I suppose. I had a young student who came to my school from a rural situation, very poor home situation, and he was quite despondent. He was in grade 6, but he couldn't read, and he felt very bad about that. And so they were trying to work with him in learning assistance and so on, but we were heading to the care facility. And I said to him, how do you feel about reading with one of the seniors? And he didn't think that seemed too scary. So he said, yes, he'd like to do that. And in the meantime, there was a lady at the senior care home who had kind of isolated herself. She had a very poor situation with her 2 sons. One had died in a very violent accident, and she hadn't been able to get over that. And she kept to herself, and she didn't participate really in anything. She mostly just wandered around by herself. And so I asked her if she'd be willing to have Jonathan as a reading partner. And because she had only gone to grade 6, she felt if Jonathan couldn't read, that she would feel quite comfortable with that. Well, they started out reading together, and I said 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. Well, the first day it was 15 or 20 minutes, but the next day it was a half an hour. And then Jonathan was coming back and saying, can I stay a little longer? And pretty soon I was having to go up and grab the both of them to come to our activities because they were so captured by this reading together. And Mrs. Cope would give Jonathan little treats from her room when he did well. And they formed this incredible friendship. Roll forward, so that went on for 2 months. Roll forward about 7 or 8 years, and I was working in Toronto, and I received a phone call from British Columbia, and it was Jonathan's grandmother. And she said, I'm just calling to tell you that Jonathan brought his report card home, and he has all C pluses and Bs. And I can only say that it was because of Mrs. Culp and the Meadow School Project. In the meantime, all of those years in between, Mrs. Culp had become very involved with the kids at the care home and with other seniors. And she was really positive and upbeat. She had lots to do because she had a real sense of purpose. And I know our time is short, and I have many, many stories of those kinds of experiences. Some of them were both the youth and the senior mutually benefited from it. Sometimes it was the senior who was isolated, and the kids were able to engage them and have them involved socially within their own peer group, but also with the kids. And sometimes it was just having seniors say, whoa, this reminds me of when I was a kid, and that kind of really positive reinforcement of being together.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, that's very inspiring to hear. Thank you. Tracy, what benefits have you, experienced and seen firsthand in your work with youth and adults in the community?
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for making today's space available. It's really exciting. Like Sharon says, I mean, every time you're bringing together people of different ages, there's just so many wonderful stories that you see coming out of it. And definitely, like Sharon was saying, a lot of the benefits are health related, psychosocial, as well as developmental for the students. Sharon gave a lovely example there. And it also, for the community, it does promote volunteerism. For example, the lady that was helping with the reading, it sounds like, Sharon, you were saying she was getting more involved in the community as well, within the care home and also with other students. It also promotes volunteerism with the students in terms of becoming engaged. So that's sort of looking at the broader community in terms of being it's mobilizing people. People, they feel the positive energy, and it just sort of goes out. There's a ripple effect from there in terms of benefits for the community, whether it's starting different projects or starting different projects within the communities or together in the communications. So for youth, I've done a couple of programs where we're bringing together older adults from the community together with here back elementary age students, grade 6, and the stories that come out of that is just phenomenal. You see students talking to the older adults freely, being helpful, and teachers are looking on in wonderment. I've had a teacher leave at the end of one of these sessions sort of saying, I haven't seen the students interact like this before. I'm going to actually go back to my classroom now, and I will be interacting or engaging differently with them because I had not had the opportunity to experience this for them. So to students tend to, at-risk older adults and at-risk younger students, everyone benefits. They tend to shine. It's giving people different opportunities to connect with each other. We're talking back to the health. Sorry, I get very excited about this, but you're talking about the health. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought in there, but people just want to connect, and connection is important to one of the well-being, or our well-being in general. So in terms of older adults, Sharon's been saying a lot of things, but the older adults, I've had them come back to us and say, wow, those students, they have similar concerns to ours. They're at a different level. And we're just sort of, and I can remember one person saying this to me, and they really were not interested in engaging. We did a pre-survey and a post-survey, and those were the types of comments that we were getting. It breaks down the barriers. It breaks down the ageism. And like the WHO says, is intergenerational connections or interventions is a way to mitigate ageism. And it's not just ageism towards older adults, it's also the ageism towards the youth. And the youth come out of it, oh, they've got energy. Oh, they want to talk to me. It's very different, engaging with an older adult who may not be a family member, like a good grandparent. Sometimes kids feel they can talk in a certain way. They need to be in a certain way with their grandparents, as opposed to maybe another older adult from the community.
Yeah, it's so powerful to see those connections and see those ageist barriers being broken down.
Yeah. I just wanted to say one thing, sort of bringing back to the benefits and that kind of thing, is we all need to go in with a lens in terms of we need to know what we think of or what we're thinking of immediately when we're talking about intergenerational. Because for some people, it's the very, very old and the very, very young, or it's the older people and the, a little bit, like not the 0 to 5, it might be, the 5 to 15 or that kind of thing. So always be cognizant of that when you're looking at things.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Leah, through your work, you have some experience in kind of research with young adults. What can you share about the benefits that you've seen?
Sure. Thanks, Anita. And thanks so much, Tracy and Sharon. It's great to be joining you both. So Anita, at the top of our discussion, you mentioned some of the complex crises we're facing and just this need for collective action. And youth, we're seeing, are already kind of keyed into this and will be increasingly tasked with undertaking the leadership that we'll need to solve a lot of our most pressing and complex issues. And for youth, volunteerism in particular can be an avenue to put their leadership to work. And it can also provide important instrumental benefits. So facilitating development of meaningful skills, building social capital, achieving upward mobility, a sense of connection, and intergenerational volunteering in particular amplifies many of these benefits. And there's a breadth of research focused on school-age children and intergenerational programming, but the benefits for young adults in that post-secondary period merit further exploration, especially since that transitional period from adolescence to adulthood is a complex time. It's a time when individuals focus on themselves and try to develop the skills and knowledge and self-understanding to take them through the rest of their lives. So that's kind of where we find out where we belong in terms of our work, in terms of our community and our personal relationships. So this is kind of a really pivotal time, and the research shows that teenagers in particular experience significant cognitive and emotional and social and physical benefits because of their involvement in intergenerational programming. So you see improved sense of self-identity, self-confidence, more likely to feel empowered to make changes in their schools and neighborhoods. And because of social-emotional exchanges with adults of other generations, teenagers experience a lot of improvements with their emotions and with their mental health, as well as their physical health. And then for youth in that post-secondary stage specifically, a lot of young adults who are partnered with older volunteers, for example, report improved civic engagement, their entrepreneurial capacities are enhanced, occupational skills are developed. And so intergenerational exchange is really an important way to keep younger generations grounded as well as aware of past culture and history. And can also have some really positive impact on young adults' attitudes toward older adults and diminishing fear of their own aging. So zooming in on this demographic, I think, is really important because youth have consistently volunteered at really high rates in Canada. In 2018, Gen Z had the highest volunteer rate of all generations. But youth are facing very different economic and social realities than previous generations. So these disruptions that are intertwined by what happened over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic are really impacting the way that youth work and learn and get involved through volunteering. So over the past year, and maybe I'll speak a little bit about this in subsequent questions, Volunteer Canada and the Rita Hall Foundation have partnered on a collaborative project called Empathy Engage. So the aim was really to foster youth engagement through volunteerism and contribute to illuminating some of that post-pandemic understanding of trends surrounding youth engaging in formal volunteerism. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, but really what that project reinforced was that given the amplified benefits to youth that come from intergenerational activities, specifically intergenerational volunteering, designing programs that meet them in their current context of shift and change in this post-pandemic world will be essential.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. I think that moves on really nicely to the next question when we're talking about design as well. What the things that we need to consider. Thank you. That there's a wealth of benefits we've just heard from there. There's many more. I think we could all talk about this for much longer, but it just gives you a little taste there. And thank you for sharing all your firsthand experiences. So when we think about what should be considered when designing an intergenerational program, Tracy, as we think about this, I'd love to hear more about your the Extra Miles Senior Visiting Programs Intergenerational Initiative. I think I got it right this time. In the introduction, I messed up a little, but I think I got it right this time. I'd love to hear about this project that you're involved with and what you think have been the factors in that program that have made it successful and award-winning.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so Extra Miles has been doing sort of like a boutique program. They do an annual intergenerational day with Extra Miles. It usually happens around Remembrance Day. And one of the first ones that we did was bringing in older adults from the community, and so that they could share their stories. And we were so fortunate at the time as we had 4 out of 10 of the participants were World War II vets, and then there was also people that remember being at home when their father came home from war and that kind of thing. So that was one of the programs that was just sort of bringing together people from the different communities, bringing in the students, and sort of an impact. One of the students had a perfect impact statement. Well, basically, they went back to their home and they were reflecting, and they wrote a poem. And basically, essentially, the poem started off as shy, scared, looking at the person. And then it ended up, the last sentence was, you can have a friend no matter what age. Just after the interaction. So these type of interactions, when you bring them together, what's been really important is being super planned, right? Who, what, where, when, why. Really, who are your partners? Who are the participants? And then it's also looking at sort of the logistics and accessibility. A lot of these things that we all do organically when we're setting up our programs. So I'll steal probably a bit of Sharon's thunder in here. There's something that I've worked with for years as well, is, you know, looking at what we already do and what can we do a little bit differently so that we're not adding on to, you know, making it a lot, not having to always create a new program. So looking what we're already doing, what are our volunteers interested in doing, and how we can build that stronger sense of community just by making a little change. Can we partner with another organization? And also in this is looking at our participants, you know, getting the participants involved is, you know, ensure the different age groups have a say in the program activities and how they can be designed or what they want to share. Also, before you bring them together, like Leah was alluding to before, is education and training. For all the participants, for, you know, volunteers, the older people, the younger people, even the teachers, is becoming aware of you know, like for older people, sort of you know, the physical and developmental stages, psychosocial, gender, neurodiversity aspects of the younger students, because a lot of the older adults haven't don't haven't had these types of conversations before. So it's another way of engaging them and interesting them and feeling comfortable when they're going into the situation. You know, as well as for youth, I mean, there's so many different aspects. Again, you work with your partners, you look at the people, but for the youth is understanding older people's mobility and hearing and vision challenges, just, you know, that, or dementia awareness. Understanding that older adults have a lot to contribute to our conversations and guidance for us. They're open to learning and new ideas. Younger people might not believe that when they're going into it. They certainly believe it when they leave.
Yeah.
And just ensuring those are some of the things that we found that have been really successful in the programming. You know, that, and when they're coming together, really ensure there's an icebreaker, ensure you're around and good monitoring. Everything that we do in our programming already, whether we're working with younger people, older people, or different things, these are all things that we do. Just we need to be, when we're doing something a little differently, is just be mindful of what we've been doing, supporting the participants, encouraging them, and listening to them. And you know, when you do that post-program survey, is, you know, when you're going to have an older adult that did not want to be there but decided to come, and they turn back to you and say, that was the best day ever, you know, that's what you'll get. It's
yeah. No, that's wonderful. That's a wealth of information there for people to take away. I think that pre-planning it, that piece is so important.
Absolutely. The better planned you are, the better you're able to adjust and adapt, right? Because, you know,
Yeah.
there's always a surprise, not always a surprise, but, you know, so we can adapt more easily.
Yeah. And we don't want to exacerbate ageist thoughts by not preparing everyone. You know, that's the risk sometimes. If you're not prepared, both groups are not prepared. You can kind of exacerbate those ageist thoughts.
Exactly. Like, I don't know, Sharon, like when you brought the students to the residence, did you prepare them that, you know, there might be adults there with walkers or people that, you know, might, you know, repeat themselves or things like that? I've heard situations where that hasn't been done, and you know, this takes a while for the little ones anyway to get over it and not to understand, which could impact the you know, potential volunteering down the road, like Leah was saying, right? Is, you know, engaging in these types of things encourages volunteering.
Yeah. Sharon, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, all really good points for sure. And on our website, intergenerational.ca, there's several really excellent resources that give you checklists to go over the very things that Tracy was talking about. And some are from New Brunswick, some are Public Health Agency Canada, some are from British Columbia. I think we've all spoken to one thing that is really important to me. And we actually have, as Tracy was alluding to, a saying that goes with our intergenerational society, that you don't look for something different to do. You just look at what you're already doing and do it differently. And I always use the idea of a book club. You know, there's many book clubs across Canada. Quite often there are retired people that are involved in them, and kids are reading books too. So all you need to do is have kids who are reading a book in class read the same book as the seniors at their book club are reading, and have them come together once and just discuss the book, and it's magic. I think all of us have alluded to something that's really important when you're considering designing an intergenerational program, and it's really important too when you think about these resources. They're not prescriptive, they're just suggestions, but it's really important to look locally and start small, right on the ground. And we have sort of three things that we always talk about when it comes to intergenerational projects. One, that it's safe and simple. So safe, obviously, COVID really hammered that into our heads, but regardless, even, you know, walking to the care center or the kids getting whatever happens in terms of mobility, it has to be safe and simple. People do not need extra things added onto their workload. So safe and simple, and fun, but respectful. And where we have so many cultures coming together in our aging society and our youthful society, it's really important to remember that it should be fun. It's got to be fun, otherwise we'll never do it again. But it also has to be really respectful. But the key one here to me, excuse me, is that it has to be collaborative. And I've worked for the government for a very, very long time and have seen come and go some absolutely fabulous programs and projects. And invariably, the reason why they end up going is because they run out of money, or the kingpin, the leader, has to go to another job, ends up, you know, moving somehow, and we lose the leadership. So I think in order to have a successful program, it's really important right from the get-go, right from the moment that the idea even pops into your head, say, who would this be engaging? Older people, young people. Let's get a representative from the older people and one from the young people, and let's work together right from the beginning to the very end, and then come back and review what we've done and see how, you know, see how it's actually turned out. June 1st is Intergenerational Day Canada, and it's been proclaimed in perpetuity in several provinces, including Ontario. And it really is an opportunity to say, let's do something on that day or towards that day. In my town, we're doing fire posters, fire prevention posters. We live in a forested area, but it's just something where you say, oh, we're already all really concerned about this, or we all are already doing this. Let's do it together. So we're planting together, we're reading together, we're making posters together. It doesn't really matter. So really starting from that, very local, simple, simple, simple. You do not want to add extra work onto your workloads. And we know how tight money is now. So any fancy thing where you need a lot of supplies or you need transportation ends up being a real issue as well. So those are the things that I would think about in terms of designing any intergenerational project.
Wonderful, Sharon. Thank you very much. Leah, we'll go back to your Empathy Engage project now, because I think it's important, or it's interesting as well, to consider when designing a program. That project you can speak a little bit about now, but getting to hear from youth what they actually want to be engaged in is really interesting. So yeah, if you could share with us what you've learned from that project, that'd be lovely.
Sure. So for more background, the Empathy Engaged project engaged 5 youth leaders from across Canada throughout the project to provide guidance and input and facilitate a series of 5 youth engagement roundtables. So each of those roundtables were hosted by youth facilitators in partnership with facilitators from volunteer centers across Canada. And it was also supported by Overlap Associates as well as Alona Doherty from the Youth and Innovation Project out of University of Waterloo. And so a lot of what we heard from the Empathy Engaged project reinforced what a lot of the research is already saying about how youth want to engage. So historically, we know that the most common motivator for volunteering among youth is the belief that they will make a difference in that community. It's their desire to contribute. And we heard that consistently in our conversations with youth in the Empathy Engaged project. And youth want more meaningful relationships with adults in their community through civic engagement, through leadership positions. In Canada, young people are ready and willing to participate, but how they are invited to engage is really critical. So we're seeing this continued decline in formal volunteering among young people. And so that just signals that there might be a bit of a disconnect in how organizations engage youth in formal volunteering, and that can have a lot of lessons as well for designing intergenerational programs. So the goal of Empathy Engaged was really to explore that disconnect further. Youth want to engage. There are seemingly opportunities, but why isn't that linkage happening? And so without a deep understanding of the ways that youth perceive and participate in formal volunteering and their interest in intergenerational initiatives, their sustained engagement, it really isn't a given in our post-pandemic context. So we heard some factors that are influencing youth engagement and sometimes even presenting barriers. So for example, the term volunteering is resonating less and less. It can feel diluted, especially given the diversity of cultural contexts in which people participate. And we've also heard a lot about what youth are looking for in terms of the nature of their opportunities, preference for something maybe more short-term or episodic or adapted to their work or school schedules. And there are also persistent barriers related to financial constraints and the time commitments that they're currently experiencing. Young people are more likely to transition between work and school several times or do both simultaneously, more likely to have precarious employment. And so really what we heard is that you want to volunteer and engage in a way that's responsive to that context. And so some key takeaways in designing intergenerational programs are really understanding and working to dismantle some of those barriers. So offering stipends for transportation, for example, for all participants. And really responding to that need to address that people have to be in a certain material position to be able to volunteer. And so to be able to support folks to get from A to B when they want to volunteer, as well as all of the wraparound supports that are sometimes really helpful. We heard communication is major. So often for young people in particular, they're looking for things online and they might not be able to have a list of volunteer opportunities near them. So they're left in the dark. So really having solid communication and online platforms, I think we heard is a really key way to engage youth. And then I believe both Tracy and Sharon have mentioned the importance of co-design. So having your prospective volunteers, your future participants have a say in collaborating and helping to design the activities that they'll actually be engaged with. Another thing to look at is the fact that youth are increasingly more engaged in more informal ways of volunteering. We heard from a lot of young people that this was kind of a pathway for them. They helped out in an ad hoc way to bring in groceries for their neighbor, and that was kind of a first step towards something a little bit more formal. So taking a closer look at that pathway from informal to formal volunteering, recognizing that informal is still very important, but also looking at ways to facilitate moving towards the formal volunteering opportunities that are so important for our social safety net.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, everyone, for all those insights. A lot more to discuss here, and I really appreciate what you've shared there. Finally, we're just going to, going beyond the volunteer rates. What would be ideal measures of impact of intergenerational volunteerism? So what should we be measuring, what to show impact? Like Leah, from your kind of research and research perspective there, what would be those kind of ideal measures? What do you think we should be measuring for impact?
Well, I think there are so many things, but perhaps just for the sake of time and for today, I'll touch on one that I'm really interested in, and that's just looking at how much the pandemic disrupted our patterns of social connection. And we're facing this growing loneliness epidemic that actually predated COVID-19. So we have really high rates of loneliness across all age groups. But particularly for newcomers and people on low incomes, and for older adults, the impact of loneliness are even more pronounced. So when we look at this from a public health perspective, social connection is really just this fundamental determinant of health and happiness. And so those social connections and how they contribute to a sense of belonging, I think, for these types of programmings is a really important measure to look at. Especially for young people, because relatedness, feeling belonging, connection with others, it's really a central factor in healthy youth development. So I think any program, and I think a lot of intergenerational programs are turning towards and have been using belonging as a metric to measure the success of their program, kind of having that as their North Star for what their program is trying to achieve, given the connections between belonging in so many other areas of our lives. And there are a lot of examples of scales and measures and indices that can measure social isolation, loneliness, belonging. And so I think programs that are designed to have an impact on that social aspect are really interesting and have a lot of promise. So that's what I'm interested in these days.
Yeah, thank you. Sharon, from your programming work, what have you kind of identified as what makes a program successful that you've worked on?
That old measurement question, right? It always ends up rearing its head. My experience has been that in intergenerational, we're looking at soft data. And until we're willing to trust that soft data, you can count as many people getting involved in as many hours and minutes and many places or whatever as you want to. But the bottom line is it really makes a difference to that very person or those two persons. I mean, if you're looking at that story I told you at the beginning between John and Mrs. Holt, like how would you measure that? Obviously, huge success for, I mean, Jonathan's life was changed because of that. And small things can have life-changing circumstances involved with them. And it's almost impossible to track that. At least I've found that it is. I think the success of our program, the Meadow School Project, it went on for 10 years. And the only reason that it failed or ended, and it was kind of a failure from many of our points of view, was the fact that there was a new administrator and she would not allow the kids out of the school. So you can't very well go to a care home every day if you're not allowed to get out of the school. So otherwise it would still be going. I think that's it. The measurement, proof is in the pudding. You know, it's that old saying. And really, it was really funny. I had taken so many photos. It was just when digital was coming in when we started this project. And I took all these photos and I probably had over 2,000. And I was looking at them at the end of the year. And it was very interesting because at the beginning of the year, the seniors were kind of wanting to take care of the kids. They were leaning over and touching them and the kids were on the ground or seated low. And the seniors later on, it was the kids that were standing and they were helping the seniors and assisting them doing different things. And at the end of the year, we had an end of the year get together at a heritage home in the park. And they were almost arguing over who was going to help who. It was really funny. Like they shifted roles, you know, and that in itself was wonderful because again, it really, it showed that there was like such huge empathy and it was coming from both directions. So I don't know, like, how do you measure empathy? It's such a tough thing. So I think testimonials, I think longevity of programs, you know, that they keep going, they have to be fun. If they're not fun, nobody wants to do them. And if we're doing them for a purpose and the purpose is very clinical, it's not going to work. This is the world, the realm of empathy. This is the world of love, of caring, of making connections. And I don't know. I'm not sure how you measure that, but I do know that it is highly successful.
Yeah. It just shows the importance of those anecdotal evidence, and that discussions.
And
Tracy, from your
pictorial.
experience, oh, sorry?
And pictorial too, the photos.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. From your experience, Tracy, what measures of impact have been the most useful? Like when you have to convince people to get involved, like, to either the community or participants, what have you found of those impacts that have been successful in the convincing people to get involved?
Absolutely great question. I just love to get into the programming and the planning and just like, let's get together. You can see the joy and see the transformation, just let's say within a couple of hours of what's going on. But really something that in terms of measurements, what was really impactful for me once is that, okay, that's it. We'll do a post, a pre-survey and a post-survey, but we didn't just do it for the older adults. We also did it for the youth. And we really got, and I'm telling you, this was like, first thing that we did during the pandemic on Zoom, terrible technology. We did something a little bit differently. A senior center for older adults was doing a storytelling project. They had a professional storyteller coming in and they're telling stories and they have conversations. So I said, okay, Tracy, we'll do it a little differently. We're going to invite the students to come along. And, the theme was chosen around these students. They were doing a theme on gratitude and thankfulness. And the storyteller was amazing, fitted in. The older adults signed up. Everyone agreed. The students and the older adults completed surveys. And it was phenomenal. That's where the older woman came out with, oh, their challenges are similar to ours. Oh, they're very interesting and that kind of thing. So that was so I like to try and do that. Again, it gets down to where you do get things. So it's still, even if we'd had a conversation with the woman, they would have said that as well. So like testimonials, personal stories are really, really valuable as well. It brings a lot to the table. It's the tangible benefits. So these surveys can actually, measure what the youth and older adults, feel about each other pre and post. And, even for younger students too, I mean, you can do, instead of 1, 2, 3, you can do a happy face, no difference face or a sad face. There's different ways that can do it. There's different options out there. Intergenerational Quebec, together with researchers from University of Montreal, are putting out a complete trousse there. It's all in French. Sharon, you'd probably love to see it. It really goes from A to Z and is giving all sorts of different ways to measure these kind of things. So it's been really there's other things there, but it's really sort of if you can highlight the success stories and the tangible benefits and what the older people are getting and what the younger people are getting.
Yeah, I find the stories are very impactful, telling people the stories.
The experience. It's not just the measurement. Going back to what you were saying, Sharon.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about the numbers. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Qualitative.
thank you very much. I would love to kind of open the floor now to all our participants for any questions they may have. If you can pop those questions in the Q&A box there on your screen rather than the chat, we'll have a look through there and see if we have some questions. Question for the panel. She says, hello, thank you to all the presenters. My question, as youth, there is a challenge of transitioning more. So in some programs or organizations that have age limits, more volunteering in the organization, how does one deal with that?
What I found here, some of the organizations or senior centers or long-term care facilities do not want youth under the age of 16, just in terms of supervision and that kind of thing. So one of the things, and there's the police record checks or the vulnerable sector checks that need to be done. So what some organizations have done when they're creating different programs is they'll actually pair up the students together and they will go together to meet with an older person. That is one way. of doing it, or the younger people would have to be, you see, it's a timing thing, right? The students, high school students, or, you know, the younger high school students are available after 3 o'clock, let's say, and sort of the people that are working and can support them, and let's say a long-term care resident, are finishing off their paperwork at that time of day, so they can't be there for the supervision and the integration, and the day programs are closed. It is a conundrum. It needs, and it's high school students, they can't get out of school. Their schedules don't mesh with anybody. Yeah, so we're working on that here. We're hoping to make a few more connections with long-term care residences, but there's also other programs, is finding common interests as well, like something that interests you, like there's, you know, if the environment is thing, there's probably groups that are working on that and would love to have younger people involved. Gardening programs. It was
Great,
that.
thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Did anyone else have anything about to share there?
It's Sharon. I just think too that we have to be cautious with people who are, you know, first launching out to do an intergenerational activity, and it can just be an event. It doesn't have to be a program. So, you know, if it's an event, you're designing it with a young people and older people, you can kind of be holding the reins of what age group you're wanting, what it would be appropriate for. I think you, again, getting back to the thing that you just look at what you're already doing and say, could we do this intergenerationally? One of the issues I think that's more of a sort of a muddle is how senior some of your seniors are and how young some of your youth are. Like, interestingly enough, we found there's ages and stages in both generations. And interestingly enough, we found that seniors who were with Alzheimer's, for example, they love to just watch the really little children. So as you mentioned, Anita, sort of 2 to 5 age group, where they were more self-focused and just doing their own thing. Whereas the age group from 9 to 13, they can work with some dementia. They can work with, you know, older, slower kind of lifestyle, and they're content, and they can make that connection. So matching the ages and stages, to me, is almost more important than matching ages, like chronological ages. But again, it's, you know, it's so totally local. What works for you, really important.
Thank you. As you've heard, there are many benefits to intergenerational initiatives and work. Those benefits are far-reaching, and we've only touched on some of them today. There's also lots of things to consider when you develop a program. It's really important when you bring older adults and youth together that you have prepared and it's intentional. As we talked about before, when you bring different generations together, one of those core outcomes is to challenge ageism. And we just don't want to be unprepared and actually cause more ageism among the groups because we haven't prepared for that. It should be done with care and preparation. So it's also helpful to chat about the topics that Tracy mentioned, like talking about ageism beforehand, physical challenges. I think you mentioned gender and neurodiversity. Talking about the things beforehand really helps prepare the stage, and talking to people working in the intergenerational field will really help you in that preparation. And I think, as Sharon's mentioned before, and Tracy too, is that remember that all intergenerational programs are unique to the needs of the participants or the organization or the community, and that intergenerational programs don't have to be complicated and they don't have to be started from scratch. Like Sharon said, it could just be an event or an idea. You're probably running an initiative or involved in something that could easily have an intergenerational component added to it. So reach out to intergenerational practitioners, people working in the field, and they can help you to take an intergenerational lens on your work. Over the next few months, Volunteer Canada will be sharing more of our plans for intergenerational work across the country. I'm going to be out there visiting folks and doing workshops, and then we'll be launching some initiatives across the country. In the next few days, you'll receive a form that you can fill out for more information about the upcoming initiatives, or if you have questions that we weren't able to answer today, fill out that form and get those sent to me. If you haven't explored the benefits of Volunteer Canada membership, please check out the membership details and benefits at volunteer.ca/membership. And please also check out the websites that we shared today for I2I, Intergenerational Society, and the WIN network that we've shared in the chat. Please check out the websites of our partners today. And with that, I think we're going to close the webinar. I just really like to thank our panelists again for joining us. It was wonderful to hear from you all. And I think it was really inspiring. I hope that their work has inspired you to get involved in intergenerational work. Have a lovely day, everyone. It's been lovely. Thank you for coming.